Hello, this is Anthony E. Parent of Parent and Win LLP, the IRSMedic, and welcome to our webinar, IRS Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Programs, Initiatives, and Mind-Numbing Hoops to Jump Through. Simplified. Now, I know some of you are watching live, and a few of you will be watching it on replay. If you're watching it live, you'll see a pop-up right now for questions that we hope to get to later. And if you are watching it on replay, you'll see a chat box below, and you could ask some questions there. I am alerted when a question is left, and you'll be notified of a response, usually about 48 hours. But for today, I hope to get to some of the questions later on. And just to let you know, this webinar is not a substitute for legal advice about your particular case. I have to leave some details out of this, or I think this webinar would really last forever and ever and ever. And I think this is what you need to know to make sense of the new 2014 offshore rules and programs. Okay, and these were the ones announced June 18, 2014. We need to know how we got here. Okay, and I'm going to make it as easy as possible, and I promise you that. So this is where I want to start with our friend called the 16th Amendment, and this is the amendment that authorized the IRS. Essentially, it was passed in 1913. It was passed on a whole pack of lies, if you ask me, but nonetheless, it's the law. But if we think about it, if we look at that, if we look at the 16th Amendment, and nowhere does it say that income should be taxed on worldwide. So why does the IRS tax U.S. persons, not just citizens, but U.S. persons on their worldwide income? Well, it starts in a case. Happened in a case in 1924, Cook versus Tate. And right here, I know I said I was going to try to keep it simple, but I want you to be able to find that. For those of you who know how to do some legal research, take a look at that case. And you'll see that it is one of the world's worst written opinions of all time. A lot of passive voice using it. And the reasoning is incredibly difficult to follow. I think they're saying that because the U.S. military is around the world, I think that's what they're trying to say, that the taxing jurisdiction goes beyond the borders, but it really taxes the persons. And why do they do this? And simply because they could. It's about expanding power, and the Supreme Court is no stranger to expanding federal power. So that's really the start of it. That's the building block of why we're in this mess today, is because of that case in 1924, which launched something called universal tax jurisdictions. However, for many years, it didn't really matter, right? Because you could hide money overseas. No one would ever know. Very, very easy to hide income. And also, if you wanted to go through the trouble of making your international tax planning avoidance a little bit more legal, it was easy. You had loopholes you could drive a truck through to basically make it so you didn't have to pay income taxes on your worldwide income. However, in 1962, a law was changed, and it's made a little bit more difficult. That was somewhat simultaneous with the Kennedy tax cuts. I imagine that the feeling was, hey, if we're going to lower these tax rates, we're going to want to increase our tax base. So they made it difficult to use legitimate offshore tax shelters. You still can, it's just not nearly as fun and easy. You don't really have that magic wand to wave that you used to. And sort of even by default, you could have an offshore tax shelter. So that was one of the things that happened. And then another thing that happened in 1970, the Bank Secrecy Act was passed. And at this point, there was a lot of concern about terrorists and drug traffickers using, at this point, we're starting to see electronic transfers of money and using financial institutions to facilitate their criminal enterprise. And the other thing, too, it was really difficult to prosecute these kind of people. A terrorist and drug trafficker, I mean, who wants to be the lead attorney on that, right? Do you want the person who you're going after to know your name? Because I'm sure someone's going to stop by your house and maybe not, maybe say hello to your family. So really you have a problem that nobody really wants to go after these guys. So they said, hey, you know what? Let's give us some civil tools so that we don't need to have these criminal prosecutions, but we can just fine people, make it a lot easier for us. A lot more simpler if we get this tool. So in 1970, the Bank Secrecy Act was passed, and this is where our report of foreign bank account comes from, the FBAR, which is now, they're calling it Form 114 for some reason. I don't know why they had to do that. I guess things were too simple. They needed to change the name of it. But this is where our FBAR comes from. And this is where we see our 50% of account value is the penalty for willful violations. That means if you have a $1 million account and you do it one time, that's a $500,000 penalty. And so pretty easy to assess. And so now you have to imagine that the Bank Secrecy Act, right? This FBAR is really for those nasty people, terrorists and drug traffickers, right? And that is what most people thought of, and most tax professionals. The FBAR was for the real criminals, not those engaging in tax evasion, right? And that was the understanding of many tax professionals, okay? FBARs would routinely not be filed, even when Schedule B, and that's on your 1040, that would direct you to say, hey, you need to file one routinely. And we still see it in 2014. We actually see returns where people will put foreign income, interest income, for in the thousands of dollars. So it's clear that there's an FBAR obligation because the account value is over $10,000, and still nobody thinks of it. And so I just want you to think of it that just because the CPA didn't file an FBAR for you before doesn't mean they're incompetent or anything like that. It just was the custom. No, the FBAR was really is only for criminals. It's not for people. It's just it's just like a speed limit. Everybody knows the speed limit's to 65. Can you go 70? Yeah, you probably can. You're going to be fine. So that's sort of what the custom was. Everybody knew the form was there. Most people knew, but they didn't think it applied. It was just, a fine to catch people doing really mean and nasty things. So then what happened? We had 9/11 happen, and so now there's a new focus on international terrorism financing. And I wasn't there for a lot of this, but I think I can assume what happened. Somebody says, hey, yeah, we should really have a law in the books to catch these terrorists so that they can't do the financing. And someone says, yeah, we do have a law. It's been passed in 1970. It's called the FBAR, 50%. What more could you ask for? And now I imagine that somebody also said, hey, you know what? We could use this for tax compliance. I imagine some sort of tax geek in a corner someplace saying, hey, we could use the FBAR to get these people who haven't been reporting their worldwide income and getting dismissed. No, we're not going to use it for that. It's not for that. It's for real criminals. Well, then I think things changed, and this is what changed. Someone was caught smuggling diamonds inside toothpaste tubes at JFK. He was coming in from Switzerland. So what was going on there? Well, what happened is it led to an investigation of UBS, which uncovered a criminal conspiracy where UBS bankers were intentionally assisting U.S. persons to hide and evade taxes. So this is great for the IRS, right? But they have two problems. There's about 45,000 UBS bank holders, okay? And just to give you an idea, there's something like 2,000 indictments for tax crimes per year. So there's no way the IRS could prosecute all these people. And then there's another problem. There's a Swiss bankruptcy law, a bank secrecy law that was still in existence at the time. Yet the IRS had some leverage. Well, they know they have this 50% FBAR penalty that's based on account value, right? And they know they can assess it 6 times because that's the statute of limitations. So if someone had $1 million account for the last 6 years, you could hit them with a $3 million penalty, right? More than what their net worth was. So that's some leverage, and that's pretty good. So they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Well, before that, let me just get back to this, that, the IRS always had a voluntary disclosure program. And usually it was for domestic income, but, you could use it for international. And it was really a situation where somebody was doing things off the books and was evading taxes, and they just couldn't sleep at night. They said, this is ridiculous. I just got to come clean. I can't live like this anymore. I'm tired of this. I can't deal with the stress. And so the IRS always had a voluntary disclosure program, and it is authorized by Congress that it's part of it, that they want people to come clean for future compliance. Now, this is what it basically has always been. You alert the IRS to the activity. Okay, someone in the criminal investigation department to say, hey, I'm not under investigation. It's okay if I come clean. They'll say, yes, come clean. So what you want to do is amend or prepare for the first time your last 6 years of returns, pay all of that, pay interest, and then you're going to have some penalties based on your unreported tax amount. Okay, so at no point is there a penalty under the old voluntary disclosure program. There's no penalty based on account value. Well, that's where this changed in 2009 because somebody was thinking, no, that's too easy. We got this FBAR penalty, right? We have this FBAR penalty that can destroy people's leverage. So yeah, we'll do the last 6 years in those penalties and interest. But you know what else we'll do? Let's put on a 20% FBAR penalty, or in lieu of FBAR penalty, on the highest account value in the last 6 years. And that way we can get some money and we'll get great press release about how much money we did and what a great program they had, right? Because they could have just used the standard program. They could have used that, but there was none of this penalty based on account value. So this is the first time we ever see this in a voluntary disclosure program. So the IRS is just paying. Do you want to risk? Do you want to risk us finding it? Hey, yeah, you know what? You might just not only might you get a 50% FBAR penalty many times. We also might seek an indictment for tax evasion. So do you want to do that, or do you want to come clean? And so, for some people, here was the deal. It was the 2009 OVDI. Last 6 years of amended returns or prepared returns. And then you're going to pay a 20% value on the highest account value. Now, for some people, it was a really good deal. If you were evading taxes for, 20, 40, 60 years, however, you're making all this money and you sort of realize, yeah, I have all this money in Switzerland, but I really can't do too much with it because I'm afraid to bring it around. Right? Well, this gave you a great opportunity. Hey, just pay 20%, and overall you've done pretty well. Now you can move your money all over the place wherever you want. But the downside to the 2009 OVDI, it was really designed for people intentionally evading taxes at UBS or their Swiss accounts. Okay. Now there's some things that the IRS didn't think about. Okay, some big things, and they're still having difficulty understanding how things really work in the world. Essentially, that they're citizens of the world. We have a worldwide economy. The United States attracts the best and brightest to come here. And then the United States has great people going all around the world, living around the world, adding value everywhere. IRS didn't think that sometimes people inherit money from people who have legitimate reasons to have that money over there. And they don't really think that 90% of people that we encounter really weren't trying to avoid that universal tax jurisdiction of the IRS. Remember that universal tax jurisdiction? Where's it come from? It comes from a Supreme Court case that no one could really understand, that U.S. versus Tate. So that's really what they didn't think about. And they were clueless about other things. So they knew they needed a new program because there was an expiration date on the 2009. So they announced the 2011 OVDI. Okay, now this one had an expiration date. I think it was August 30th, and I know we had a hurricane up here, so it was postponed. The deadline was postponed a little bit. And yeah, we're based in Connecticut. We do handle cases from around the world, though. So the 2011 was announced. Now they need to make it more punitive than the 2009, right? They can't give the people the same deal because they have to make it look like the person came clean originally. They got a better deal, so they have to make it a little bit more punitive. So now, instead of requiring that 6 years that all voluntary disclosures was the standard, forever, now they say 8 years. We want 8 years of your 1040s because we want to get more taxes, and now we want your FBARS because we want to see where your high balance is. Now it's more punitive, right? We went from a 20% in lieu of FBAR penalty, and I put FBAR penalty there. It's really not an FBAR penalty. It's a substitute for an FBAR penalty. It's more punitive, but now the kinder and gentler IRS allows those who made innocent negligence or small mistakes to opt out of that standard 25% penalty. And by kinder and gentler, I mean going through a full audit of all income for any of those years, and then also being examined for the IRS for willfulness and non-willfulness. So you ended up in a situation, and it still was generally true, where those who acted innocently have far more hoops to jump through in order to get the best result. Now, what happened? The 2011 expired. The IRS finally realizes people are learning about universal tax jurisdiction every day. Maybe they read an article in the expat newspaper. Maybe they're reading it now. Maybe you just found out just minutes ago watching this, right? So they said, okay, well, the 2012 we're going to just announce that, and there's really not going to be an expiration date. It's going to be subject to change. We're going to make it even more punitive, right? We're going to add that. We're going to make that in lieu of FBAR penalty 27.5%. And then we're going to add a few things in here to try to address people with smaller account values, so a 12.5% penalty. And then for some people with limited access to their funds, 5% penalty. But then for those people who are innocent, it's still too high. We're still looking at a 5%, even if you qualified for a 5% penalty, which most people didn't, there'd be reasons, you'd still be looking at these penalties based on account value that are way too high. And these are people's retirement, and this is the money they have, and it's way too high. So what we ended up doing was we had a lot of people who said, oh, I can't live with the risk of the IRS catching me. I can't live with the risk of getting hit with one 50% penalty. So I need to go on the program, but then they would choose to opt out. And so that's what we have done, and we have talked to and helped out thousands of people around the globe. Now here's the thing, and then the IRS also, before I get to my next part, I need to insert this. You also realize that most experts are not thinking about the IRS and creates a streamlined program for them, and that was in September of 2012, I believe, is that when that came out. But when you look at it, it is so limited and it's so sort of difficult to understand, and it creates this whole sort of risk structure and amount that very, very few people can take advantage of it. And then those who can are so leery about how the IRS has stated things that they don't want to. So now this is the problem, okay? We are submitting offshore voluntary disclosure programs, and we have two people taking a 12.5% penalty. Some are taking a 27.5%. Most people are saying, we're opting out. We can't afford to pay that. And they're more than fine paying us the larger fee to opt out because there's a lot more work involved. And so now we have dropped all of these opt-out requests on the IRS. And I'll tell you, the accounting work for foreign accounts, it's totally unlike doing something domestically. That it requires an incredible team with very specialized knowledge to do, both for us and the IRS. Well, the IRS is simply overwhelmed. They cannot move these cases along. And we're still submitting cases, and more people are coming forward. You know why more people are coming forward? They're getting letters from their banks, from their foreign banks, because of the foreign account for FATCA. Because now these banks have an affirmative duty to make sure that they don't have any U.S. persons, and so they're investigating and seeing if there's any addresses, any U.S. addresses, U.S. phone numbers, U.S. passports, to see if anything like that is attached to an account. So then in Switzerland this year, we've seen a ton of these people who learn. I mean, they're learning from this letter from a bank. Wait a second. I got to do this? No, I thought this was for people who are doing criminal things. I'm not doing a criminal thing. I just have a foreign bank account. So many people are absolutely surprised. And even if their bank told them in 2011, hey, we're going to just close your account and we're going to move the money here, and the bankers didn't tell them why, the bankers didn't say, hey, yeah, the reason why we're doing this is because we have to do this because we're going to get criminal fines, and they're not telling the U.S. account holder, because they don't want to tell the U.S. account holder, hey, we're going to further our criminal conspiracy by moving the money here. They're just assuming the U.S. bank holder wants to engage in a criminal venture, which isn't the truth. They just don't know. They have no idea what's going on, but the bankers are thinking that their clients are trying to break the law. And now, in 2014, the bankers are going to say, now we're going to tell the IRS you've been breaking the law, so you better come clean and send us proof that you've done that. So that's one huge reason why people are coming forward right now. So really, the IRS has to do something, right? They have to get rid of opt-outs, and they have to move the cases out. They just simply can't move it. We have, I know we're familiar with pretty much every OVDI examiner. We really have, we're dealing with them. We're familiar with the group managers as well, and we know what they're up against, and they just really have to move the cases out. And also, this is the other thing that's going on. They have to punish those people who are still trying to avoid taxes. The people who didn't respond to the letters from the Swiss banks, or the people who are just going to say, well, I opened up my foreign account with another passport, so I don't think they're going to find me. Well, FATCA, good luck with that. So really, the IRS is looking to punish those people who still are trying to avoid taxes. So that's where we get our 2014 offshore voluntary disclosure programs. Oh, by the way, did you notice how I went from OVDI to OVDP? And I think they made the switch from the 2011 OVDI to the 2012 OVDP. I don't know why they needed to do that, initiatives to programs, but that's what it is called now. But you know, if you do see someone use those words interchangeably, that's all it is. So what do we have? We have 4 offshore voluntary disclosure programs. First is that standard OVDP. We have now a new streamlined domestic, totally new streamlined domestic program. Now we have a more liberalized streamlined offshore, and then now they codified the FBAR only. So I'm going to talk about each one in detail right now. So let's start with some of the better ones for people. Let's just say that you don't have any unreported income from your foreign accounts, or you reported your income, but no FBAR. Let's just change that. That's bothering me. That means the IRS has codified this. That means you don't need to go through. Typically, you do not need. I need to put my attorney word in there. Typically, you do not need to go through a whole offshore voluntary disclosure program. There's actually an FBAR only process that doesn't involve amending. Does not involve amending returns. Does not involve any penalties. So it's really sort of the best. Just simply you didn't know how you had an FBAR. This is a case where maybe you're a signatory on the account, but someone else claimed all the income, or you simply did report all your income, but you never filed an FBAR. So this is one of the programs. They codified this now, made it a little bit more official because it was semi-official before. Now let's go to the next one. This is the streamlined offshore OVDP, and this is different than the previous one. Remember the one I was talking about that came out in 2012? It was really limited. And really the big thing for this is whether or not you qualify, because it's really nice. Because there's a 0% quote unquote FBAR penalty. So for this, you just need to file last 6 years of FBARs and 3 years of amended or original returns and pay those taxes. So the offshore is really, for expats, this is not so bad. Not so bad at all. I guess unless you're made a significant amount of interest, well then things could be worse, I guess. But really, there's no penalty on account value. So this is really something that expats should be hopping all aboard. And you just need to make sure that you were not intentionally doing it, but rather you just got caught up with your life there and weren't thinking about reporting your FBARs and this income. So as long as it was a non-willful, or as long as you weren't willful, you'll qualify. Now, let's talk about the next. This is a totally new one, okay? This is the streamlined domestic OVDP. This is for if you're living in the U.S., okay? You don't qualify for the offshore. Okay, not as good, okay? And still, I guess it's somewhat like blackmail in a way. I'll explain it in a second. Here we got to do our last 6 years of FBARs, and then we need 3 years of amended or original returns, and then there's going to be a 5% penalty on the year-end high account value in the last 6 years. Now, see, this is the thing. A lot of our clients right now who have entered in the program are going to opt out and just go shoot for that 0% penalty. There's some transitional rules going on right now. And we're saying, hey, look, you want to opt out, go for a 0% penalty? Let's do it. But, we have so many clients who are saying, you know what? I can't deal with this stress anymore. I'm going to pay the IRS 5%. Just to put the case away. And it's something like if somebody has an account value of $500,000, they can continue the opt-out or in that long process, or they could just pay a $25,000 penalty, be done with it. And so a lot of them, hey, I get it. You're doing it. But the fact is you had no willfulness about it. So it's really something, I don't like this all. I mean, it's better. It gives somebody an option. But I really don't like it, and because it is so different than what the old rule used to be about voluntary disclosure. There's no penalty on account value. You don't do that. So why is it? And especially when now you have worldwide reporting obligations, what's so magical about these foreign accounts now that require them to get a penalty, whereas somebody who, if you evaded the same amount of taxes domestically, you get no penalty based on account value. So it is better, but it's still, it rubs me the wrong way, and I know it rubs a lot of our clients the wrong way, but it's just sort of the easiest way out of a situation. Now let's talk about the standard. The standard's still out there, the standard OVDP, okay, and it's very much like the 2012. Okay, you do your last year 8 years of returns, 8 FBARS, 27.5% penalty on a high balance, but if the IRS gets your name after August 4th and you are on the list of banks, your standard penalty now goes up to 50%. That is essentially one willful FBAR penalty. So it's something where you need to, if you are engaging, if you are somebody who is willful, and remember the streamlined programs are for people who were not, innocent mistakes, maybe negligent mistakes, and that's really something for your attorney to decide whether or not what you qualify for. You do need to get a legal opinion on that. You absolutely do. But the standard is for people who have been engaging in evasion, or the way it looks like it might be way too difficult, way too risky just to put a streamlined in, and it's something where there's high account balances. Okay, and also with the streamlined, there's no protection from criminal prosecution. And what I've told so many people is that your real threat wasn't from criminal prosecution. Your real threat is from significant FBAR penalties. So where we have found ourselves is that some people should still use the standard OVDP. And if you need to, you can go into it, try to go in by August 4th. I know people watching this is going to be August. On replay, you're going to watch this after August 4th. The standard penalty will be 50% for some, 27.5 for others. But here's the thing. You can still opt out. So suppose you are somebody who is on the list of banks and would normally be subject to that standard 50% penalty. You can still opt out, and you might be able to get a zero penalty or maybe a $10,000 per year non-willful penalty. Okay, so that's something that you must understand. Even the standard, you can still get zero. The process is a little bit more in depth, but you also get more protection from criminal prosecution. And for some types of cases, okay, especially if there's someone else involved that may make it look like something, that might be your best bet. And this is really something where you really need to get a legal opinion on which one is right for you. So let me just recap what we have so far. Okay, so let's talk about our 2014 OVDPs. We have our standard, right? Our standard OVDP, which is a rather complicated thing. We know there's a 27.5 or 50% standard penalty, and that we may opt out of that. We have our streamlined domestic OVDP that has a 5% penalty, and we know we need to be it's only for people who were non-willful. We have our streamlined offshore OVDP, which is a great deal for expats as long as they weren't engaging in anything intentional. Then we have our FBAR only. So I think I've made this really simple. All right. So let's see if I can take some questions now. Okay, so someone's asked me, why would anyone offshore ever use the standard OVDP and not the streamlined? Okay, let me give you an example. Suppose that you really didn't know about your worldwide reporting income, but let's suppose you have account value of, say, $10 million, and you went to a bank that's known to help Americans evade taxes. And let's say that you have made significant amount of money, it's really some big gains in the last, say, 6 years. Okay. Now, here's the reason why you would want to use the standard one, because if you went with the streamlined, okay, you're just doing your last 3 years of taxes that you're going to pay. You're going to miss out on the 6-year statute of limitations, because the IRS has 6 years of when you file returns to charge you for tax evasion, right? So just imagine if somebody, so let's just imagine that somebody has, they made $1 million in 2008, $1 million in 2009, $1 million in the last 6 years, but they only pay taxes on the last 3 years. Well, in that case, you're really, and I think your tax attorney will say you're really at risk for being charged, indicted for tax evasion because you got out of those 3 years. The streamline's not for you. The streamline's not for you. You're evading taxes. That's why you should not use the streamlined. If you have significant income in the last 6 years, do not use it. That's really dangerous. And so that means, but does that mean you're going to be subject to a 27.5% penalty or 50%? Well, only if you take it. You can still opt out. So it's really more of a chance to get ahead of it, get ahead of the IRS, so that they know that you can now. You're the one who's able to write the narrative. Hey, look, I'm the guy coming clean. I'm trying to tell you. Yeah, I guess I could have used a streamline, but now I just don't think it's a good idea because I had this significant income that I'm willing to pay. And I don't mean 6 years. We have to do 8 years, but I'm talking 6 year statute of limitations for criminal purposes. But 8 years if you want to be in compliance with the standard program. So I hope that answers it. That if you have significant income, and by significant, again, that's going to be a question for your attorney. If you have significant income that you will avoid taxes on by going with the streamlined, I would not recommend that at all. And then I guess now my follow-up question is, well, what if I did this, the streamlined, and then did the soft disclosure on the other years? Oh, I'm just not going to get into that because now you're just opening up a can of worms that will never end. So I'm going to have to end the question there. Okay, next question. Can I hire you? Yes. Well, yes and no. You can hire my firm, but just for a lot of people who, a lot of people call it, and I know they want to talk to me. I manage a firm. Everything here. Remember when I said at the beginning of this, I can go on forever about the OVDP. For every little part of the OVDP, we have specialists on this, and so that there's just no way I could see handling a case from start to finish, no matter how talented I was. And I think I am talented, but it really does require a team to get this all done. So yes, you're more than welcome to hire us. Before you do, make sure we're the right place for you. But just be aware that while I do manage it, and we may talk after you hire us, day to day, you'll be dealing with someone hand selected from my team. And next question. Okay, I got time for one more. Okay. Oh, so what are opt-outs like? Okay, so people want to know, well, what's the opt-out? How have opt-outs gone? I'm going to say very well. Very well, even when we don't have all the facts on our side. Where somebody maybe they filed an FBAR for one account, but they didn't file an FBAR for another. Maybe they somewhat knew, but weren't quite sure. Maybe they were just hoping. I would say our opt-outs have gone very well. They just are very time-consuming. Something you might want to watch out for is making sure if they're also going to look at your domestic income. So for some people, it might be just more cost-effective to take a standard penalty than to opt out. And again, most people we're dealing with haven't had the intentional tax evasion. And I think for most people, just because the U.S., and this is what you need to understand. If you come from a foreign country, have a foreign background, or if you're living in a foreign country, no one else is taxes you quite like the IRS does. And I know I've read some legal reference books where they say, well, every country does it. No, they don't. No, they don't. The only country that taxes you on your worldwide income in the manner that the IRS does is the United States. Nobody else does. And so that's really something that we think is helpful for people when we're opting out or looking for some sort of penalty mitigation. Okay, that's it for time. I think we did pretty good. So anyway, guys, just to refresh, this is not substitute for legal advice. I am only hoping, I'm giving you a general outline. Hopefully I didn't get too complicated, but hopefully now you have an understanding generally of what offshore programs are available for you, generally some of the deadlines you're dealing with, generally how we got into the situation that we are. So, and this is me, by the way. I am the younger gentleman here. This picture's a little dated. I probably look a little more gray right now. Next to me is my father, David Parent. Not with us is our brand new partner, Michelle Wynn, and she is someone who manages the OVDP department, so she would probably be somebody you would be speaking to at one point. So we are Parent, and Wynn LLP. We do serve taxpayers worldwide. We offer a free initial consultation right now. So you can call our OVDP hotline at 888-477-4258. We are on Eastern Time in the United States. We're about an hour and a half away from Manhattan. So I know we do have a lot of clients coming from Long Island and the tri-state area who like to visit us, and so you're more than welcome to do that. But about 90% of our clients hire us without ever step footing in our office. So we're very comfortable with every country. We're learning a lot, so we do enjoy what we're doing. And if you are thinking about hiring us, just visit our website to learn about us. We are a little bit different than a typical tax law firm. We don't charge hourly rates as one of them. And our job is to get this situation out of your life as quick as possible, and to just get an effective representation. So there it is. My time is up. This is Anthony Parent for Parent, and Wynn LLP, the IRSMedic, and I thank you for watching.